Dr. Andrew Whelton is Associate Professor of Civil, Environmental, and Ecological Engineering at Purdue University. He has worked on disaster preparedness, response, and recovery issues in the water and public health sectors, supporting the U.S. Army, NIST, private sectors, and universities, helping identify research needs with the goal of improving community resilience. And Dr. Amisha Shah, on the top left of your screen, is Assistant Professor of Civil Engineering and Environmental and Ecological Engineering at Purdue. Her research focuses on understanding the role of various physico-chemical processes on water quality during water treatment, sustainable water reuse, ballast water treatment, and CO2 capture technologies. And then specifically, this includes evaluating chemical reactions, the kinetics of, and byproduct formation during disinfection. So that's various processes like chlorination, oxygenation, oh, I'm sorry, I'm messing up that. Various processes, and you know them all very well, UV treatment and I can't do the oxygenation. That's a tough one. And evaluating mass transport mechanisms and contaminant rejection during membrane filtration. Mickey Rich is there in the lower port, is the Assistant District Manager for the Paradise Irrigation District. You might have heard of Paradise. The district is the sole water provider for the town of Paradise. And obviously, too, it was sadly affected by the Camp Fire in 2018. Ms. Rich is a resident of Paradise and has worked for the Irrigation District since 1998 and was a key staffer and public information officer during the Camp Fire response and recovery. Susan Teefy is the manager of water quality at East Bay Mud and has worked for the past 30 years in the drinking water field and has worked for large water agencies, a small consulting firm, and the US EPA on drinking water treatment and distribution issues and regulatory compliance challenges. Now, I'm not sure the order of people taking, but whoever is up first in the batting order, please grab that screen.
Or will do. I will serve as the moderator. Thanks, Dennis. Let me pull it up. All right. Okay, hopefully everybody can see this. Everything's good to go. I would like to thank you so much for inviting us all here. We're really excited to be here. And again, my name is Amisha Shah. I am an assistant professor at Purdue, and we've been working together in this panel and as a team for a little while now. And we're really wanting to relay to you the work we're doing, sort of linking the effects of wildfires on drinking water quality. And so with that, I think Dennis already provided the, how do I move down? So my background, so I really won't go into this too much in detail. I just wanted to provide sort of a little bit of space to explain where I come from. I really focus on water quality and water disinfection and water treatment processes. And looking at disinfectant byproduct formation, looking at membrane filtration, but really, I think the graph on the bottom right sort of also relays sort of how the work that we're doing here with wildfires and water distribution networks ties into some of our other work where Dr. Whelton and I have looked at disinfection byproduct from plastic pipes. So we're really interested in trying to understand how water quality can be affected in building environments. So in this case, how PEX pipes can both leach disinfection byproducts like trihalmethanes, but also serve as a nice sink due to absorption. So we're really interested in sort of examining how water quality is affected both in the distribution system and within residences. And with that, I would like to move to really why we're here today. Our panel really is focused on looking at wildfire impacts on drinking water quality and looking at the problem, and also talking about the response, recovery, and research efforts that we sort of put together to hopefully address a lot of the issues that are here that are related to this problem. And so I will actually serve as moderator, and actually Mickey will go first, followed by Susan, and then Andy and I will wrap up this talk, hopefully to sort of move through the problem, response, recovery, and research efforts in this sort of left to right direction, and hopefully give you a nice broad picture of what we're trying to do. And then I think we wanted to have a little bit of time for Q&A, if that's possible. But I will first give the floor to Mickey. And please shout out when you need me to change the slide.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thanks for inviting our district here to talk about this. I just wanted to start and introduce the topic by really talking about what happened during the 2018 Camp Fire and how this really begins and ends with people. We are the water agency that serves the town of Paradise, where people live and work and take care of their children and go to school. The day that the Camp Fire happened, we were all, aware very quickly that something was wrong, and everyone pretty much had to leave immediately. It roared through town, and in a matter of about 6 hours, almost the entire town was gone. The response efforts for the Paradise Irrigation District, other than those who were working at the treatment plant, which was actually just a little bit above Paradise, everyone was fleeing. So the entire staff fled. We were focused on taking care of our families and making sure that everybody made it safely out of Paradise. So in the end, after, the next day, we sort of were taking inventory of what had happened. We're getting very little information. But just to kind of sum it up, most of our staff lost their homes. All of our board members lost their homes. So all of this work that kind of comes after this is happening from remote work and relying really on the communities that are around us. If you want to go to the next slide, and I think it might be 2 slides ahead. There we go. I just want to show you, to give you an example, so because sometimes when you hear what happened and you hear this number, it's hard to take in context, but this map here is the fire investigation map, and the close-up, all of the red, those are homes that were lost. The green dots on the map represent homes that were partially damaged, and structures, homes and businesses. And then the black dots are those houses or structures that remained. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see kind of a zoomed out version of that map, which we used to just call the red map, because pretty much everyone was affected by this, and most homes were gone. Our immediate action, if you want to go to the next slide, was to assess the wellness of our employees. We closed all the main lines down. So what we did is we were working with CAL FIRE in our state, and there was a need for water. When the treatment plant guys, when they came down the next day to kind of make some assessment after the fire was gone, the tanks were dry. So they had been making water. Our Magalia Reservoir was pretty much untouched by the fire. The treatment plant was singed by the fire, as well as the courtyard, but the tanks were dry. And so in an effort to make sure that there was some water in Paradise for firefighting efforts, they turned everything off except for one main line that ran down the middle of town. And so the next 3 or 4 months, actually it may have been longer, like 6 months, was spent refilling the mains. And that is a tremendous, tremendous job. There were just so many people working on this project. We called in our Cal Warren help. We had help from local agencies, Cal Water and Chico specifically. What they, they just sent the troops in. So what happens, one thing you need to do before you can start turning water back on is close all the holes, right? And so every burned structure was an open hole in our system. So every 10,480, the whole system had to go street by street and turn off all of those services at the meter. When they were turning water back on, so let me just kind of stop here. At this point, we hadn't done any water quality testing because we were busy getting water back into the system. Our immediate response was to issue a boil water order, which is pretty typical at the beginning of a fire. As we start turning water back on, it just, because of what had happened the prior year in Santa Rosa, we thought we should probably do some testing and test for VOC specifically. So it was about a month and 10 days before we reissued our water quality advisory to include the VOC. And we changed it from a boil order before you drink to a do not drink, do not use. And the reason for the drastic measures was because we just didn't know. We didn't know. We knew that there were likely pockets of severe contamination, but without having the staffing and the resources to test the whole district, you don't know where those places are and where they're not. And we had people coming home, people coming back and trying to live on their properties, or if they had a home that made it, wanting to come home and drink. So we believe, if you want to go to the next slide. Just in essence, we believe that what happened, and again, it's all theories, right? I mean, it's a very plausible theory, but because nobody was here to see it happen, we suspect that what happened is as those homes burned, as businesses burned, and these leaks started to happen, as well as the firefighting efforts that were happening during the day over that 6 hours and maybe beyond, we had not only CAL FIRE and our local fire response teams, but we had individual owners trying to save their homes. And so it basically caused a back pressure event where the debris and smoke came in to the system and caused what we thought, we knew then was some level of contamination, but we didn't know where or to what level. This is about the point where we decided to contact academia as a resource for our recovery. We reached out to someone at Berkeley, and they said, if you want to know, if you want to study pipes, you really need to contact Andy Whelton at Purdue University. And so we made a call, and thankfully they responded quickly. They came out. We tested all sorts of pipes, different types, different places, low pressure, high pressure zones to try to figure out what happened. So, and what we really determined is there was not the rhyme or reason that we needed. So we really tried to avoid having to test every service lateral. We thought there has to be some patterns here or some way, but in the end, the results were so varied that we made the decision to test every service lateral or replace every service lateral and test all the water in our main to make sure it was safe. Can you go to the next slide? So I believe Purdue was actually on site in Paradise as we were developing and finaling up our recovery plan. And our recovery plan really focused on, our objectives were to support the community short-term and term needs, because like I said, we knew that we were going to be a town that was rebuilding, but we had people using the water now and living in now. So our priorities were really based on helping the people we were here and creating a path for return. Some other things that we knew we had to address were, when you do a citywide do not drink order and you're dealing with a science that is not, it's still, you know, we still have things that are being discovered about it. And when you don't have all the answers, it's hard. You know, mothers don't want to wash their babies in that water. You know, they're scared. And so we knew that we had to come up with a way to talk to our citizens here and to create a plan that really ensured that when they came home that they knew the state of their water. Can you go to the next slide? So we developed a method of testing. So we tested our system over the last 2 years. We've tested in over 6,000 locations, and we tested for a series of VOCs in each from each sample. So, I mean, it's over 400,000 individual tests. We, our main lines, this map here that you see in the background, this is the clearance. So this is every time we cleared a home, we would give it a green dot. And I remember it took about a year to get to that point. So we had about 1,500 standing homes. We tested every single standing home. And we had a method of testing to ensure that we were getting good results. And because we know that, you know, VOCs, they're kind of hard to test for unless you know the process and unless you can ensure that sample is good. So we would let the water stagnate for 3 days, which caused a lot of scheduling and communication with our customers, hosing them over so that they could have an alternate source of water while we were doing that testing. And then we displayed it all on a map so that anybody could come and see the sample results for any test site in Paradise. And those test sites are still up. If you'd like to go to the next slide. Let's see. Okay, I think we can go to the next one after this. Thank you. So 97% of our mains are in compliance with drinking water standards. We evaluate each segment of main, and so they look at the water quality, not just the water quality, but also the hydraulics, because we wanted to make sure that once an area was cleared, that there wasn't a chance of it getting recontaminated. So for that reason, we took a very cautious approach. So for instance, if we were going to clear one house on a street that maybe only one house was standing, we would look at the hydraulics for those areas and make sure that the main lines that all, you know, every single main line that water traveled through before it got to that service line was cleared and that the water met standards. And then we would also test the service lateral at that home to make sure that the water was also meeting standards by the time it got to their tap. Or not to their tap. I mean, we like to say from, you know, treatment plant to tap, but really it's to the meter location, as both of you know, or all of you know. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So now we're at a point where in May of 2020, we have we've lifted all the water advisories for standing homes. We have a method in place where we actually exchange that service lateral for new builds. The town follows up with that, and they require either testing or replacement of the plumbing that on the home if it existed. So we're to our water quality assurance monitoring. So over the next 2 years, we will be performing additional tests. We take about 30 tests, 30 samples a month for testing. And then all of that is also on our website. So that pretty much concludes it for me. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm next. Can you hear me okay? We're good? My name is Susan Teefy. I'm in Oakland, California, with East Bay Municipal Utility District. And we followed the news like everyone else did, and were dismayed and saddened by what had happened in Paradise. And we recognize that we all live in a wildfire-prone area in California. Roughly 30 years ago, we had a similar situation in the Oakland Hills, where we had about 3,000 homes destroyed in a matter of a day or two. And similarly to what Mickey said, we had a significant part of our distribution system dewatered, and had crews out there basically just shutting off services at the curb because the houses were destroyed. We have no idea if we had a similar contamination of VOCs, because we just didn't know to look for that at the time. And in the heat of the moment, your focus is on getting people back in their homes and getting the system back into service. And I think it's important to note that we learned a lot of lessons at that time and since that time, and we're much better prepared now for this kind of thing. And like Mickey said, we have mutual aid agreements with other agencies. We do a lot of emergency preparedness exercises and drills, and we have put a lot of resources into building redundant facilities and interties with our neighbors. And so we're overall better prepared, certainly than we were 30 years ago. Next slide. Mickey talked a little bit about CalWARN. That's a California Water and Wastewater Agency Response Network. The purpose of that organization is to support and promote emergency preparedness and disaster response among specifically water and wastewater utilities. And we try whenever possible to heed the call, not only because it's a good thing to do, but we learn a lot. We've been fortunate recently that we haven't had any large disasters like that, but every time we provide some support to another utility or some mutual aid, we gain a tremendous amount. We sent crews, just as an example, there was an earthquake in Napa a couple of years back, and we sent plumbing crews up there to help repair mains. It's a fairly specialized team of people, and we have resources that are useful to other water utilities. PID put out a call for assistance with sampling those thousands of samples that they took. And we sent a couple crews of water samplers and also meter mechanics to help install, pull meters and install the sampling devices and that sort of thing. And it was a great experience for East Bay Mud as well, just to learn about how hard a recovery like that is. Next slide. It became clear in our little bit of participation in that event that there were a lot of unanswered questions. Like Mickey said, it wasn't really clear exactly what the source and the fate of the volatile organic chemical contamination was. In a real situation, your focus is on getting back in business, getting water restored and getting people back in their homes. But it became clear that there was a need for some additional careful, controlled work to really suss this out and try to understand exactly what's going on, and if there is something that we could do to either be better prepared or to respond in a more data-driven kind of way, perhaps, rather than figuring out as you go. And so we reached out to our neighbors here, Contra Costa Water District and San Jose Water Company, and also Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and of course with Purdue as well. And we pulled together a proposal to do some research, and I believe Andy and Amisha are going to talk more about this later. But the idea was that we would collaborate on some focused studies to try to understand this phenomenon a little bit better, excuse me, with an eye toward being better prepared, and also recommending ways that utilities could recover from a situation like this. So we were shortlisted for the proposal. We put in, I think we're going to find out this month, actually. December is when we find out if we're funded or not. So hopefully we do get funded and we can continue this kind of work. So that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you, Mickey and Susan. It's great to see you all. We don't get to see each other as much anymore. So I'll talk next, and then I'll pass it off to Amisha. I'm Andy Whelton. I'm at Purdue, and if we go to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing. This is just a slide showing the types of work that we do. In 2014, I was called into West Virginia to help the governor respond to and recover from the chemical spill that contaminated the capital's drinking water with a black licorice smell that turned out to have a 9-day water ban. Nobody was allowed to use the water except for firefighting and toilet flushing. All the schools and restaurants were shut down, and everybody's kids were in the house, and it was -3 below zero. So that is compounded on top of the fact that the water ban occurred the first week of the legislative session in the Capitol, really drew focus on the need for, are we asking the right questions when we say the water's safe? What questions do we need to ask? And so these are types of issues that we need to think about. And since then, in the disaster since I participated in, they keep coming up. Next slide. So, water infrastructure, you've heard from Susan and Mickey about the types of damage, physical damage, chemical contamination. Some of the fires this year in Oregon and California have had this types of damage again, including contamination. And so our work really is to help utilities, communities make decisions when, they have a problem, or find out if they have a problem and recover faster. Next slide. If you want, you can read about the science and the data associated with the Tubbs fire and the Camp Fire. So we connected with the city of Santa Rosa when Mickey and Paradise called, because we thought it would be a good idea to bring Santa Rosa into Paradise so that they could start talking to each other. Santa Rosa had gone through the Tubbs fire and gone through recovery for 5 miles of their water system. And here's Paradise with 172 miles of their water system facing the same issues. And so they work together. And this study here kind of discusses some of the results. One of the issues that we found was, in some places, hazardous waste scale drinking water contamination. And in other places in the same system, we didn't find any contamination. And so that's the issue that Mickey raised, is you don't really know where the contamination is, and that was a challenge. And so we're hoping to make headway on what to do. Next slide. So I'm talking about study 1. Now I'm going to jump to study 3, and Amisha is going to talk about study 2, which we have some good news about. So study 3 is a retrospective of looking at how different agencies can help these disaster survivors or homeowners better, right? So one of the issues after the campfire was that the community, as they came back, came to Mickey and her crew and started asking all these questions about building water safety, right? Where do I get this? How do I find a plumber? Which pipes are good in my house? And that's really, they were trying to rebuild their infrastructure to figure out what's going on in their system. They couldn't necessarily cross the meter and help the community as they were trying to lift themselves up. And so that's where there's opportunities in California and elsewhere across the country for public health agencies to stand up, making decisions based on evidence. And we have some information out there that's coming with best practices for these types of agencies. And I'll pass it off to Amisha, I believe.
Yes, thank you. So I think, our goal was really to try to help these utilities figure out where exactly this contamination was coming from. And of course, we didn't really want to rule out any factors at the beginning. So we really had sort of 3 ideas of where the sources of the contamination could be. Of course, as mentioned before, possible sources from forest biomass and structural combustion, which could contaminate the air, and then during a depressurization event, essentially contaminate the distribution network water. But again, we wanted to also rule out some other possibilities, such as a second option being the potential for plastics within the distribution system to also thermally degrade and potentially be a source for some of these contaminants that we saw. And also the third option being that they could come from homes that had been destroyed and essentially contaminate the water through back siphoning. Now, one of the easiest things that we could do, as researchers, was to essentially examine option 2, just to see if that was a potential source or not. And we ended up doing, I think, a nice study to see if we thermally expose various types of commercial plastic pipes that are routinely used in the distribution system to elevated temperatures that would overlap with temperatures that you would see during a wildfire, could we indeed generate VOCs and SVOCs as well, semi-volatile organic carbons, compounds, and have them leach into the water phase. And so we went ahead and did a comprehensive study here where we examined 11 commercial plastic pipes, exposed them to various temperatures up to 400 degrees C for 30 minutes. And we really saw three important findings. First, we absolutely saw benzene leach into the water, and benzene was considered to be one of the most important contaminants of concern, primarily due to its health effects and also the limits that both California and the EPA have in regards to its concentrations that can be present in water. But we also saw some SVOCs, and all of these compounds, of course, were found for different types of plastic pipes at different levels, but also at different temperatures. And so, of course, we have a nice effect with the types of plastics that we have and its temperature dependence. And I don't really want to go into too much more detail about this study, but I would like to just make a shout out to the fact that this work is about to be online. It has been recently been accepted in Environmental Science, Water Research and Technology. And so please look out for it and check it out further. And last but not least, after this study, I just want to also point to the fact that this is actually a website that Dr. Whelton has posted that gives more information about plumbing safety, as well as information about the campfire response. And so if anybody needs additional information, I think we try to really cover a lot of information that I think the community would be interested in. So if you would like to learn more, please go to plumbingsafety.org. And with that, I would like to close and say thank you. Hopefully, it was a good presentation, and I'm not sure if we're early, but of course we're open to any questions we would like to help answer.